Hi everyone, Simon from Horoma Studio. As promised in the last video that I think was uploaded last week, I'm gonna have a look at a special type of teardown because I'm gonna do a critique of my own work. I don't really have a name for the series yet, but I'll come up with one later. So let's get started. So the project we're gonna have a look at today is one I've been working on, I think it was 4 or 5 years ago. It's a housing complex in Versailles, so actually near the castle that is quite famous in France. The whole thing was about like a pretty, like in terms of brief, there were like this idea of like luxury housing, basically with like really expensive materials and like high-end spaces, etc. So pretty nice stuff and quite like premium. The other thing was that we're near a lake, or not a lake actually, it's a reservoir. So it's like artificial little pond, or it's actually a quite huge pond that it was just next to the actual building, which was under here. So it was pretty interesting. And this other part that was really important was that there was like a huge park around it. So like this idea of being remote from the rest of the actual city and like the busyness of the city, and have like this idea of like a remote place and like a huge park surrounding you. I'm not gonna have a look at all the images, but I'm gonna focus on this one, I think. The one thing I think that I can still say in terms of like when you work on a series of images, you have to be really careful of your hue, how can I say, consistency. So even if you're doing like different type of the time of the day, you actually want to have like a proper, how can I say, like a balance basically, or like your color palette have to be matching in between the images, which is obviously not really the case here. Like for instance, this type of sky that we have here should be matching with this one, whereas this one, which is in the middle of the day, should be matching a little bit better with this one. You can have like different palettes, but they have to sort of work together, which is not the case here again. So this is something I would definitely do differently today. Again, as I said, these images were done. I actually started working, it was back when I was in Paris. So I had like a full-time job and I was doing those images on the side. So not that it's an excuse for anything, but it just means that it was pretty heavy days. And yeah, at the beginning of my career, if I may say. So just in terms also, because one thing I think was working quite well with these images is the sort of sequence that it's created. So basically here you have like a nice sort of zoomed in version of like the entrance of the project, or like the actual project. Here it was just more like a sequence of the entry. Whoops, what did I do? Sorry. The sequence of the entry and like the garage and stuff. So it could have been better, this one, but it was still interesting. This one was, I think, the most successful because it had like a nice feeling, but we'll get back to it. And this one also was pretty nice because it showed like a nice image of the back of the project. Overall, I think the idea that was nice is that in terms of depicting the whole project, this sequence of images was enough to understand the project in its entirety. And then we had like a bunch of interior renderings, but they were not really necessary at the time. So as I said, I'm going to focus on this one. In terms of composition for this little boy here, I think it was pretty good. Like the framing, I mean, was really nice because, as I said, like the really dense foreground of vegetation really adds this idea of like being hidden by the adjacent park. So that was a really nice thing. What I would change is, of course, that I was using really crappy libraries of trees that I had back in the day. Today I would have like something more with like actual 3D and probably a little bit of depth of field in some part of the image to have like a even better idea of like reframing the eye basically. One thing that is nice, I think, is the angle that we chose is actually nice because it shows nicely the curvature of the roof, which is one of the like particularity of the project, and also this idea of like the slabs. One thing that is not the most how can I say common is that we used a pretty high point of view, because you can see like this guy is here and we're basically at the level of this level here. And I think it was a pretty good call, because otherwise we would have been looking too much upward and it would have lost like all the details that is inside of the building, because what you want to do is to basically create a relationship between the different apartments basically and the surroundings here. So I think this was done pretty well. One thing I would do differently in terms of lighting is that you can see here that the light was actually pretty strong, which was something I should have explored a little bit more. And I think it would have been nice to have like the same type of like sunset thing and cast shadows of the trees maybe in the lower part here. And this would have brought like a bit of warmth here and keep the rest quite cold. Maybe we could have like maybe a part here, because if the sun comes like that, this could be warm as well and this would be cold. One thing that I find really bad is the cast shadows that I've done here. They're bad for two reasons. The first one is that they're photoshopped, but in a really not convincing way. And the second one is that they're actually just black, because it was at the time where I didn't understood that shadows were actually not black and not just like a desaturated version and darker version of the like the base. They're actually sometimes more saturated, and they usually are like blue or purple or whatever. It depends on the color. But basically this catches my eye quite a lot. I think the placement of people was pretty interesting, because there were like all these little stories going on. I think maybe I was too lazy at the time, but I would have maybe have more like maybe have like the whole penthouse here lit, so that you could read like this sort of like really fancy thing with like the openings on this side. So this is a bit lacking here. And I think maybe a kind of privacy thing with like a bit of curtains. I have curtains actually, but I don't know. Maybe it could be improved. Everything can always be improved. What are other things that are still related to composition? I think this is okay. This is becoming a little bit too unclear because of the clutter. So I would have had something that still gives this edge and this corner more legible, because it would be necessary, I think. There was one thing interesting, like with the reflection here happening, so I would have maybe tried to play a little bit more with it. One thing that was horrible, or like could have been done better, is, well, the vegetation in general. I had like 0 3D assets at the time. So all of this is 2D and photoshopped. So I think this is maybe 3D, but this is 2D, and you can actually tell. So I would have like something way different here, and a bit more like, a bit more fluffy probably, but that's my take. But the rest is, I think, okay. I had like an actually pretty good 3D model, so there's like a lot of small details that I wouldn't have at the time on my usual SketchUp based model, but I was working with a really good architect that was really into details. So I had like really nice windows and things like that. So it was actually quite nice to have like that type of level of detail. So light, I think light is fine. There was also like this thing already that I can see is that I had like different types of temperature depending on the place, which is good because you're never going to have exactly the same temperature from one private apartment to another, because nobody uses exactly the same light bulbs. So this is nice. And I think that's pretty much it for this actually looks a bit too dark now that I can see it. And it would have been interesting to have some type of highlight so that they can highlight the hedge here. That would have been actually quite nice. Another thing also that I'm thinking now is that maybe you could have like artificial lighting from the outside that could have lead the eye to go like that way, because we're kind of lost at the moment, and have like some sort of highlights on the edge of like the fence here and other parts. but this would be super subtle, but still this would add like a lot of depth. The sky I think is too saturated. I can double check that right now. Beam boom, yeah, it's a bit too saturated. We can see, and the blue is like way too, like it's a bit too cyan or something. There's something wrong with the actual hue of the sky. Another thing just regarding this guy that is really poorly integrated, and even like, and well, actually his fucking foot is in front of the fence, so good job, Simon. But even the type, like, as I said, it's supposed to be like a slightly premium apartment, so you want people that are like a bit more dressed up. At the time I didn't have like really good cutouts, so sometimes it's fine, sometimes it's not really fine, but for sure now I would do that differently. This would have been like a funny idea, but I think it doesn't make sense to have a guy, although I think I was going for early morning. Yeah, it's more morning than the end of the day, so it's fine to have someone cleaning your, like, the entrance. I think it's fine. What else can I say? In terms of details, there were like a big thing regarding the texture, and I think it's not really, like, there are interesting stuff, but there's some fuck-ups. This is supposed to be metal, like a sort of anodized metal, so we don't really see it and understand it, so that's a bit of a, we actually understand it here, but it's a bit too, I don't know. I was definitely not the best at V-Ray, at the time, so I think there's something lacking in the texture. And also this texture of which is supposed to be stone, it's like slate with like a hatch pattern on it. And you can sort of see it. The thing is that for some moire shit thing happening, you can have like really weird reflection, whereas here it's like looking decent. So I think it might come also from the fact that I was rendering stuff at a pretty low resolution at the moment. At the time, whereas now like I render like 5 or 6K usually, whereas this one should have been like maybe not even 3K. So that's maybe one of the thing. But beside that, I was pretty happy with the image, to be honest, at the time. I remember like the discussion with the client was really, really cool, and really like he was really open to like that type of framing and like more original way of selling the building. So that was really, really nice. And it actually ended up being a good collaboration. So that was nice to hear and start at the time with that type of client. So I was quite lucky. I'm going to stop here, I think, because I don't have much else to cover in terms of other details. I don't think I can say much. I've covered everything. So I'll probably just stop here, to be honest. Yep. I'll stop here. So yeah, I'll stop here. So that was the first teardown of my own work. Still like name in progress. I will hopefully, what can I say? Hopefully you've learned some interesting stuff in there. It's not like the one project that I had the most stuff about. So hopefully the upcoming projects that I will cover will have like more details and more like views that I can go through, so that I can show you like more the work in progress. But this one was actually quite interesting, I think, to cover, because it was you can see like the limitation of the assets that I have at the time, and how I managed to maybe do something quite interesting nonetheless, but still like having many things that could be improved nowadays. For sure I would like have a quite different image, I think, today, but I'm pretty happy with the composition that I went for at the time, which is a good thing. So as I said in the presentation video of these new type of teardown, I'm hoping that it will sort of motivate you to go back to your own project that you've been working on in like several years ago, so that you can see the different type of like with a new eye, the errors and maybe the good things that you did back in the days, and maybe like actually find ideas that could help you for projects that you're dealing with nowadays. So I'll stop here. Thank you again for watching. I hope this new type of teardown will sort of like interest you, and I'll keep on doing them probably every month until I'm tired of my own work. So yeah, cheers guys, and see you in the next video. Cheers.
you.